Welcome to the Brett Davis Podcast. Well, good evening, everybody, wherever you're at. Of course, I'm Brett Davis, and I'm not supposed to say of course because my wife says I say of course too much. So I'm going to work on not saying of course. Okay? Is that good? Here I am today at IQ Podcast, Attorney King's studio in beautiful Coronado. And if you haven't been here before, I highly recommend Coronado. Just hurry up and come and leave. We don't want a lot of people living here, so traffic doesn't get too bad. And I'm very honored to finally get a chance to have this next, I'm going to call her a superhero, on my podcast show, Janae Sergio.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we did radio, right?
Yes, we did.
And I need to have you come down one of these times and co-host the radio show with me, and then also be on the podcast and interview some interesting guests. We always try to keep it interesting, so it would be great to have you do that sometime.
I'd be honored, of course.
We would be honored. So your story for anybody else that's out there is fascinating in that you survived so much in your life. And now you're trying to share everything that's going on with you now, and of course what you've accomplished with your new book. Do you have a copy of the book anywhere?
I do.
I knew you did, by the way.
It's always sitting next to me.
Perfectly. I have mine at home. Perfectly Flawed, which is a great book. And I'll tell you, I don't know how to describe your story. So why don't we, for people that are not familiar with your story. And first of all, thank you for, is it 8 years of service in the military, in the Navy?
Yes. It was an honor to serve.
Thank you for your service. And you continue to work in some way with military, correct?
Yes, sir. I do. I'm currently the Chief of Air Force Lodging. So I work for the Air Force, overseeing 88 Air Force Inns.
Wow. All over the country.
Yes. And also internationally as well, overseas.
Did they at least give you an assistant?
I have a team. I have a pretty large team. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I was going to say, because I can't see one person doing that job. That would take a team. Right?
Yeah. Well, each location has a lodging manager and a staff beneath them. And so I have a pretty big team here in San Antonio that assists me as well.
Good. And we look forward to meeting you in person and your family, of course. And I think it's going to be awesome to see the things you're going to do. And I look forward to collaborating with you on some things, because I think you'd be a great team member, and we fully believe in what you're doing, and we love your story and your energy. So where does this whole thing start? I mean, in your mind, where would you say the book? I mean, I don't want to ruin it for people, and we want to keep them a little bit in suspense, but go ahead and start, because your story again is it's an amazing story.
Thank you. I come from a tough background. I come from a long line of family dysfunction, and my mom was a single mother throughout my childhood. At the age of 16, I had a tragic incident that happened to me, and my mom decided she didn't want to deal with me anymore. So she took me to a homeless shelter in Hollywood, California. From there, I had to spend the next 2.5 years essentially surviving on the streets of Hollywood, avoiding attempts to groom me into sex trafficking and drug addiction until I finally joined the Navy at 18 years old, and I was able to change my story there.
So again, you were how old when your mom dropped you off?
I was 16 when she dropped me off. Prior to that, I was kind of shifted around to various places, and we were really struggling to get along. And I had run away a couple times trying to run away from the abuse. There was a lot of physical and verbal abuse and neglect. And I had run away a couple times trying to get away from it, but I ended up back home every time. And finally at 16, she just took me to a shelter and left me there.
So not even an orphanage, just right to a shelter, she dropped you off.
She dropped me off at a shelter. It was actually an emergency night shelter, so it wasn't even a stable place to stay. I had to get there at 7 o'clock every night and wait and hope that there was a bed available for me. If there wasn't a bed available, I would have to stay out on the street and just, in some instances, walk up and down Hollywood Boulevard looking for well-lit areas so that I could, protect myself from predators. And I would just wait until the morning when the free clinic would open up so I could go take a shower and take a nap in their waiting room.
How long were you on the streets?
It was 2.5 years. I joined the Navy about 18 and a half, so 2.5 years in total.
So during that time, being on the streets, I mean, even for a month, I mean, but 2.5 years, off and on, mostly on.
It was the entire time. There were times where I got to, into transitional living centers. There's various resources in Los Angeles for homeless youth. It's actually a connected network that they have there. And so there was a period of time where I was living in one of their transitional living shelters, which helps youth from the age of 14 to 18 uh, kind of develop independent living skills, and it helps transition them into an adulthood. I ended up actually phasing out of that and moving into an adult shelter, which is called Covenant House, Los Angeles. And I lived there for a little while until I joined the Navy. When I joined the Navy, though, and I let them know that I actually joined the Navy, they kicked me out. They said that it didn't align with their program. And so I ended up back on the streets and having to couch surf until I left for boot camp.
So during that time, at that age, you really don't have any guidance. I mean, did you try drugs?
I did not try drugs. I was afraid to. My first day in the shelter, I met a girl who had already been roped into sex trafficking and drug addiction. And when I met her, she explained to me really how that cycle worked for her and how the cycle kept her down. The need for drugs, she had to do sex work to get the drugs, but then she did the drugs to cope with the sex work that she was doing. And so it was just a cycle that she couldn't get out of. And when she explained that to me, I was like, that's not something I want for myself. And so I made a decision in that moment that that was not going to be my future. And anytime people tried to coerce me into doing drugs, and that was one of the big ways that they would try to lure me into sex trafficking was through gateway drugs, that they could eventually get me into those type of acts. And so I knew better, and I refused to try.
So no prostitution, no
Nothing.
drugs.
No, no stripping, no
No,
dancing.
it's a miracle because of your circumstances that none of that ever happened. And you know what? In those circumstances, not making an excuse, I could see why somebody would get into that because of
Yes.
survival.
Every day on the streets, you're living in survival mode. You can't see past the next couple hours. And the promises that they would make were very lavish and they were very enticing.
Mhm.
One of the people that tried to lure me in was actually a mule that was placed in the shelter that I was living in. And so she would try to kind of convince me with the things that she had. She would show me her cell phone or some of the gifts that she was being given. And she would say, see, you could have this. And I just thought to myself, well, if you're still here, then you must not be making that much money. You must not be doing that well. And I would also see her coming home at night, and she would have bruises on her face from getting beaten. She would be crying hysterically from events that had happened. And so I knew that this wasn't something I wanted for myself. And I wasn't going to even experiment with drugs because I was afraid that that would just rope me right into that life. And I couldn't see myself getting out if I got in.
During that period of time, did you see anybody pass away from drug drug usage or abuse?
Not that I remember, but people would just kind of disappear. And so I wouldn't have known. The streets, when you're living on the streets, people just come and go a lot, and you'll kind of get close to someone and then they'll just disappear. And I would say that that was actually the situation with me for some people. They probably had no idea where I ended up when I left for the Navy. I think some of them actually did catch up with me on social media years later and said they wondered what happened to me because I just left. And so, if anything like that happened, I don't think I would have known about it.
Did you ever think about the military at any other time before your mother dropped you off in Hollywood?
The military was never on my radar. I didn't really understand much about what the military did, except for, kind of what you see in movies. And I didn't really have an understand. I didn't have a family or anything like that that was involved in the military. I didn't know much about it. And when I actually joined, one of my girlfriends had invited me to have lunch with the recruiter. They took me to Carl's Jr. and he got me like a big juicy cheeseburger. And for a homeless person, that's a huge deal. And so he definitely won me over. He promised a future, something that I couldn't see for myself. 3 to 5 years, I couldn't see out for myself, but he promised me a stable future, an ability to go to college, which was something that I couldn't envision for myself at the time. Um, and so it just made sense for me to take that risk and go for it. And I'm so thankful I did. I'd say that joining the military was probably the best decision I made in my life.
So your girlfriend's like, "Hey, we're going to Carl's Jr. You can do whatever you can eat whatever you want." Right there, that's the buy-in.
Yeah.
And then you knew this gentleman was a recruiter, but you just said, "I'll
Which I
just."
didn't know what that meant even. I
Really?
really just had no idea about the military. So I had no idea who this guy was that I was meeting.
So he paints. So you go to you're eating your burger. He's talking to you, and you're like listening, probably nodding your head. You probably have stuff coming down the side of your face right there. And
Burgundy hair, long nails.
really,
Yeah,
really,
I
burgundy hair
did.
and
I
long
did.
nails.
I did. I was
Can't
very
picture,
Los
can't picture,
Angeles.
can't picture, can't picture it. Sarah, can you picture her with burgundy hair and long nails? Sarah's like, she's not sure. She's just nodding her head. I don't think she gets it either. But I get it. I see where you're at. So he tells you these things. Apparently, your girlfriend saw something in you and somehow got him to go to that luncheon.
Mhm.
And when he saw you, I can't even imagine what he thought. He probably thought
I
burgundy hair,
think,
long nails.
yeah, yeah, he was probably like, well, I think he was concerned that he wasn't going to be able to get me in because, and I think that's why a lot of recruiters don't necessarily go to the shelters or they don't go to,
Sure.
they'll go to the high schools, but they won't go to the shelters because there's this mental model that we all have some sort of criminal background or drug use or something that's going to prohibit us from being able to enter into the military. So I think he was concerned about that, and I did have something that was going to work against me, but he was able to help me work through that. And that was I wasn't able to get my high school diploma because I was trying to work. And that was required to join the military.
Right.
And he was able to work and help me get a waiver to join without one. So that was really helpful.
Well, you said one thing, you said a couple things, a reason why you might not get in. One thing you did leave out that I don't know if that's even an issue, but mental health. A lot of
Hmm.
people think that people that are on the streets have a mental health problem, which probably a lot of them do.
Hmm.
Because there was a period of time where I lived out of my car, and I can tell you, I met a lot of people that were going through things that definitely there was, and I think everybody's circumstances are different. I don't think it's right to put everybody in a box and say, well, they're
Yeah.
this way or that way, because I think every circumstance is uniquely different, like yours was.
Yes, but when you say about mental health, I agree with you. And I think that when you people typically walk past a teenager who's homeless, they'll say, "Well, go get a job. You're perfectly capable of getting a job." And they don't take that into consideration, what that person has been through and is going through that may be preventing them from being able to get a job or to hold a job. And a lot of it is the mental health or even just having that confidence in themselves or confidence in the people that they work with, other people. So I think that is another issue. And mental health at the time for me, though, it wasn't talked about when I was homeless. That was over 20 years ago, and
Wow.
that was taboo still.
Well, you look like you're 25 now. So how's that possible?
Thank you. I just turned 40.
Hard to believe. Whatever you're doing, that Carl's Jr. Burger is doing the trick, I guess, huh?
It was all the salt from the ocean.
Is that what it is? Okay.
That doesn't sound
Salt, the
very
salt, the
good.
salt, the salt air from the being a sailor.
Yeah, the humidity and the ocean breeze. It's good for your skin.
Apparently. Well, the other thing is too, you look happy. And I think
Yes.
when a person's happy, I think they become radiant. My wife always looks very young herself, and she's always very happy, and except when she's pissed at me. But she's typically very radiant, and so it makes a difference. I think when somebody is really enjoys what they're doing, which I think you do love your life.
Yes, definitely.
Did you ever imagine that? So let's get to this. Let's go back a little bit. So you get into the Navy. Is there any time that you thought, what the hell did I get myself into?
Um,
Or did you say, like, wow,
no.
this makes sense. I could do this. I can see a career out of this. I can see, I mean, what was the thought during that period of time?
There's a saying when you're in the military that they're called lifers, and so I was going to be a lifer. That was the plan. I was going to do probably go beyond my full 20. I loved it. It felt like for me, it was a lot easier, I think, of an adjustment than it was for some other people. First off, I gained a family with the military. I had a stable paycheck, I had a place to stay, and I had free food all the time. And so for me, it was already like, "Ugh, I could do this forever." It
And
was,
showers, you got to shower.
I could shower. I didn't have to go to the free clinic. I could sleep safely. Um, for as far as like the structure and being, yelled at and all of that, that also was something that I had become accustomed to, just growing up in an abusive home. And then in the homeless shelters, you actually have to follow a very strict routine in order to stay. And so all of that lended to the military structure, and for me it came a lot more simple than I think it did for other people. So I never really questioned my decision. I always felt very good about it, and it changed my life for the better. Absolutely did.
Did you ever go and use the GI Bill at all for college? Did you use that?
I did. I did. I tried to get take college classes when we deployed. So we deployed right after 9/11, and we went to the Arabian Sea, and we launched 112 days straight combat operations over Afghanistan. So
Wow.
while we were deployed, yes, so I did. I was one of the first service members actually shipped off to war after 9/11. While we were deployed, they actually brought college professors on board with us so that while we were deployed, we could get college classes out of the way. So I went and totally forgot that I didn't have a high school diploma and I hadn't got my GED yet. And I tried to sign up for college courses and they were like, you're kind of missing something here. And so it raised that flag for everybody that I needed to get my GED. So while we're there launching combat air operations, I'm down on the mess decks taking my GED test for 8
Wow.
hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Sarah,
I ended up
do you got something to say about that? That's pretty. Can you cut in a little bit to the conversation? I got Sarah jumping in. She's doing a handstand right now. She just stopped.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
I think
Little
you
loud.
are phenomenal. I think
She got her GED while
I
she was at, and
I mean that's I'm listening, I'm going, "Oh my God. Wow.
Thank
Wow.
you.
What an amazing, experience for you." I mean, what an you you're probably just very strong person. Is it too loud?
little loud.
There you go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. All right.
That's
Yeah. I look at you and I think, my gosh, you have, with everything you've gone through, with all the things that you, I mean, with your mom and with, just going through life, out in the streets. I mean, I can't imagine it, because I mean, my family life, I've always been protected. And so I listen to your story and I'm thinking, oh my God, how did you, um, how did you make it? How did you, and I'm listening to you and you're just such a strong person. I think, teenagers, in high schools need to hear your story. I think, I just think teenagers need to hear your story, period, because a lot of
Thank
them are
you.
probably going through things and you've gone through everything. I mean, you went through hell and back, you know?
Yes.
And so you have a voice. You have a voice that I think um, young girls and I mean even young men would benefit from hearing your
Thank
story.
you.
So
Thank you.
Have you talked to many of the schools about your book and about life in general?
I haven't got a chance yet. I'm still working on getting out to some of the shelters and the schools so that I can do some speaking. I had to kind of get over that first hump. I did my first speaking engagement this weekend,
Oh,
and
good.
yeah, I think I just needed to kind of get that out of my system so I could gain the confidence that I can do this. I know how to speak. I've done public speaking. I've worked for the military. They kind of drill that into you. But this was different because this is talking about my story. And so I wanted to make sure that I would be able to get through that without breaking down as well. And so
So
I'm definitely wanting to do that.
where did you do the talk at?
We did it at it's a brewery here, a local brewery here in San Antonio called Back Unturned Brewery. Um, But they're
I'm
closely tied with the military. So they work with Grunt Style and some of the other military companies here, and they wanted to help raise funds for human trafficking for those
well,
rescued from
good.
human
Okay.
trafficking.
So I was
So
going to
they
give
put
you, so I was going to give you a hard time because I kind of saw that you had did this talk, and I thought it was at a brewery, and I was going to say, as long as the beers are coming, you got a great audience.
yeah, it couldn't
As
have been
long
a
as you
better.
keep talking, you're going to do really well. But they gave some of the
Yeah.
percentages of what they made to a shelter for.
Yes. Well, it went to 8 Days of Hope. I'm not sure if you've heard of 8 Days of Hope, but they're renowned for they go after a natural disaster, they go for 8 days and they rebuild the community. That's typically what they do. But they've recently entered the fight against human trafficking, and they're building safe houses now.
Oh,
And
good.
so that's what, yes. And they partner with rescue organizations, and they go in and they build the safe houses that they need. So they just went up to Tennessee and helped the Tim Tebow Foundation with his safe house as well.
So where are they based out of?
They are based out of Mississippi, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, but what people do is they come from all over the country, and it's a volunteer organization, and it's typically people who have trade skills that they can help with rebuilding. So they'll come with their skills, and they'll just help rebuild houses in the community. It's really beautiful what they do, and so I wanted to raise awareness for them as well as help raise the funds to support their cause.
So it's kind of like a Habitat for Humanity, but for people that were victims,
Yes.
mostly women, I would think.
Mostly women and children, and they're typically the type of rehabilitation they need is going to be different than somebody like me who was homeless. Um, they're going to need a different type of care, and so that's why they're building special safe houses for them to be able to just change their own story with safety and security around them.
How many people to a household typically when they get a facility or a
Oh, I
house?
think it ranges. It ranges from anywhere from 13 to hundreds. It depends on how big they and that's what they're usually called on for. If there's a rescue organization that already has a safe house, but they've reached capacity and need to either build another one or expand, that's what they'll come in and do. And they're very good about the way that they build. They don't just build. So the first shelter that I lived in was open bay, and so it was just a bunch of beds in a room. And we didn't have any type of privacy or anything like that. But they said that they're very specific in making sure that they're building private rooms for the people who are rescued, so that they have that security and they're not just put in a big bay area. So it's really nice what they do. They take all of that into consideration, the needs of these rescued persons.
Sarah, do you have any questions for her? So, what message would you want to give to a young girl or a young man out there that maybe is in a situation like this? Because there's people I understand that are being groomed that are actually living at their parents' house and not
Yes.
necessarily on the streets, correct?
Mhm. Correct. It's especially with the social media and with people staying home during COVID, predators really moved in on social media, and they went into platforms where they know there's children, and platforms where they know the parents aren't really accustomed to that platform and don't understand it. And so the message that I would give is, especially for kids, is, be alert, be aware. Don't just trust people online. If somebody is giving you, attention, if they're starting to make you feel, I think one of the big things that they experience is kind of the gaslighting. So initially it's just like narcissism behavior, right? Initially they'll get love bombed, they'll get the praise, and they'll get all that they need, whatever it is that they're missing. That's what the predator will move in on. So if their parents aren't giving them praise, or if they're not feeling like they're having a sense of connection or community, that's what these predators find their way in and provide for these youth. And then when the youth start to try to pull away, then they'll start getting the mean behavior or the gaslighting or the guilting. And so, you'll start to see, for example, as a parent, your child's moods will start to kind of go up and down, and they'll start changing. And that's when you have to really step in and take a look at what's happening on social media. These predators are very good at what they do. They are much smarter than the kids that they're talking to. So for any youth who thinks that you're going to outsmart these predators, you're not. The only way is to just stay away from them and to block them and not have any communication with them. For parents, get apps that monitor what your kids are doing online, how long they're staying on certain platforms, Pay attention to the platforms they're spending the most time on. And then as a parent, learn that platform so that you can get in there and kind of look for those cues yourself. Get get apps that monitor what type of things your children are Googling so that you can get a gauge of what they're interested in or what they're learning about or talking about. If they're Googling certain topics, then you know that you might need to have a conversation with them, especially if they're sexually charged. So just really staying in tune with your kids and communicating with them often. I say as a parent, one of the things I learned, I didn't have this growing up, obviously, and so I'm learning it all on my own. But as a parent, there's a point where you are no longer able to control your children and you have to move into the zone of influence. And I think that's around 8 or 9, where you learn to become more of an influence for your child. And that's where you build that relationship that they feel safe coming to you and talking to you about these types of things. So for my daughters, if there's somebody saying something to them that makes them uncomfortable or is just, putting them off a little, they feel safe talking to me about it. I don't have a home where it's like, you don't talk about that, or, they're afraid. So it's really that they are out there on every single platform, and they know how to get in, and they know how to talk to these kids, and they know how to convince them to start fighting with their parents, become a problem child, and then disappear. And it looks like they ran away, but they were really groomed out of their home.
Janae, have you heard of the app Life 360? It's a
I
free
haven't.
app, and I just recently put it on our phones with our kids, and it's pretty amazing. I almost I don't know. It's weird because it tracks them everywhere they go. I literally, if my daughter's in the car with her friends, it tells me how fast they're going. And
Yes,
if they're
I
going,
think I heard about that part. I think I
yeah,
actually heard that of it
it's
because of
amazing.
that, right?
Yeah.
That's their commercial.
So
I
why are
use
you
it.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I use a different app. It's called Custodio, and that's the one where you can see
Studio.
like what they it's Custodio. And with that one, you can see what they Google, and that helps with kind of
Wow.
getting a gauge of like what.
There you
So if
go.
they're like searching up a word, you can also like turn certain apps off, or you can limit their time on certain apps.
It's good to
But
know.
yes, it's really good.
What is
It's
it
really
again?
helpful.
How do you spell it?
Custodio. It's Custodio.
Okay.
You need to check it out.
Custodio. Okay.
And I'm
That's
going to check out
actually
the
really
Life
good.
360 because my
Yeah.
daughter's going to start driving soon.
Well, I got to tell
Well,
you,
it's important. Yeah.
she put it on me, and I was in the bathroom. I was real paranoid. I was like, going in the bathroom, and she calls me. She said, "How
Well,
long are you
because
gonna be
it's
in
a
the bathroom?" I'm
family.
like,
I wasn't
I was
trying.
looking around. I was making sure she couldn't see what I was doing. I was like,
I'm not monitoring you. I want you to be able to see the kids, and it's a family, and it's like, and he's
she's
like,
like,
"What are you doing now?
you're
You,
you're in the bathroom. You've been in there
So,
for 5 minutes. And I says, well, it might be another 15. This is one of those things I can't rush. I mean, it just,
my husband tried to put the Custodio on mine. I was like, you're not going to look at what I'm Googling.
yeah, exactly.
But
Well,
it's good for the
we
girls
have very
know.
abstract. I have an abstract mind. So, I mean, I'm all over the place. You're probably the same way, I would guess.
Yeah, yes, I am. It's just a puzzle brain.
You see your
My
husband coming up. What's your husband's name?
Chiago.
Chiago.
He's a lot more introverted and like mellow.
You balance each other out.
Yes.
So Chiago texts you. He's like, he's Brazilian.
He's
Does
Brazilian.
he have an accent?
A very strong accent.
Janae,
Wow.
what's this? You keep you keep looking at
Googling.
you keep Googling midgets. Why are you looking at midgets so much?
Yeah, he's like, I guess I need to have a conversation with Janae about the things she's researching. Like, wait a minute, this wasn't for me.
Well, tell him hello for me, for me, and also from Sarah. We look
I
forward to
will.
meeting both of you sometime. With all the information that you're talking about, as far as the whole abduction and grooming, why is it the government can't seem to get a handle on it? Because I would think that should be a priority, but why isn't it more of a priority?
I'm surprised because they can monitor, when people leave their house. They can, for COVID, all the monitoring and tracking they were able to do, all the adjustments they were able to do. I don't understand why they weren't able to adjust to monitor for predators. And I'll tell you, there's a and I'm gonna be blatant about this. There's a
That's
sex
why I asked
offender.
you. That's why I asked you. I wanted you to be blatant. I want you to really say what you feel, and I want this to be as real. And you can cuss if you want to. That's okay too.
Yeah. I might.
And you
There's
and Sarah are going to get along great.
So a couple years ago, there was a sex offender, a tier one sex offender who was catfished by somebody who was using my photos. He thought that myself and my children were going to move in with him. He has been stalking my family for almost 5 years now, like badly. He gets my address. He finds everything. And
That's scary.
yes, it is. And I've sent the police to his house several times. And when I send the police, every time I contact the police about this person, I tell them he has tried this was even when my daughter was 13. He has tried to follow my daughter. He has tried to start conversations with my daughter. He's a registered sex offender. He's not supposed to be communicating with children online. You guys need to open up an investigation. It's been almost 5 years. They still have not opened up an online investigation into this man. And I'm telling them that he's trying to communicate with children on social media. He creates thousands of profiles. They won't open up an investigation.
Do you have copies of the messages that he sent?
I have copies of the messages. I have her blocked log of how many profiles of his that she had to block on social media.
This is really dangerous. This is
it's very dangerous.
This is in Texas. What police department?
He's not in Texas, and that's why I'm having trouble getting them to do anything about it, because he's in Ohio and we're in Texas. And so they keep kind of pointing the fingers at one another. And I'm just thinking, with all the other things that they're willing to go after, why are they not willing to go and investigate this man's online behavior? Because if he's trying to talk to my daughter, who else is he trying to talk to?
When's the last time?
Who can help you?
Let me ask her real quick. When's the last time that he reached out to either one of you?
We just sent the police to his house last week because he found out that I was doing an in-person event, and he commented on the page of one of the businesses I work with and said, I'll actually be there. I can't wait to finally see Janae in person. It was a threat. It was his way of kind of trying to scare me. And so a security company got involved, and the police actually went to his house and let him know that you're not allowed to leave without permission, because he's a tier one sex offender. He can't even leave the state without permission.
You know who works out there in Ohio is Eric Estrada. Do you remember Eric Estrada, the actor?
Yes, I do.
So this is the type of work he does. He works with the sheriff's department, and
Really?
they catch, hundreds or maybe thousands of these sex offenders. All the time.
I'm surprised she knows who Eric Estrada is.
I do. Well, I'm 40.
That was a long time ago. You should know that name. I hope Eric's not watching. I mean, I'm not saying Eric's old, but
Eric's been on our show. But anyways, he talked about it. You should listen to the show. Get on IQ Podcasts and listen to it. It was a good show, and he talks about what he does out there.
He's still an actor. He's actually, he's an active sheriff. I mean, he got out of acting and actually became a real sheriff.
Okay. So I might even try to see if I could get in touch with him. That'd be pretty cool to talk to him and see if he could help me.
He goes to these people's houses and helps break the door down.
Oh,
goes in there and helps arrest them. So he's actively involved. He's not just the face. He's actually finding out who these people are, and he's going in. They're very surprised when he comes in.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's been really stressful. That's one of the dark sides of social media. And when you talk about the the romance scams that happen on social media, so just like these predators are coming after our children, you also have romance scammers who are coming after the people typically that they are scamming. A lot of them are not fully in touch with reality, like this person.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. And so they're very scary. And once they find out that they've been scammed, they're able to then find out who the person in the photos is. And then they come and harass me. I actually got a text message or a tweet a while back from a guy who got like a $50,000 loan out for one of these scammers. And then he messaged me and was like, are you going to give me my 50,000 back? And I'm like, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. You had to come find me after that person left you with your money.
Can you imagine?
So
unbelievable.
I'd say I get angry men messaging me probably every week that got scammed and figured out that they got scammed. And then they come after me and I don't know what they think I'm going to do for them.
That's crazy. So we've talked about a lot of things, a lot of varieties of things today. One thing is you're a survivor, and you're a phenomenal voice for people out there that maybe are lost right now. And how did the pandemic, you think, affect a lot of the teenagers? And how do you think that's also affected with what's going on with the whole abduction thing?
I would say, oh man, first of all, it made them, we were already dealing with our own pandemic of social media, making children and teenagers, causing struggles for them to be social. And it's easier for them to socialize online than it is face to face. A lot of, they're not going through those struggles of learning how to socialize with one another face to face. They just do it online. It's really easy. And so the pandemic made that compounded that situation. And you had a bunch of kids who were just sitting at home in their rooms on their computers, and parents were kind of dealing with their own situations. They weren't necessarily paying attention to what their children were doing. I think it put a lot of children at risk in a time when their mental health was maybe already a little bit unstable, and the world was unstable for them. So there was a lot of uncertainty. And so these predators were kind of able to come in and give them that feeling of like that dopamine. And and what I'll tell you is, like, for example, my daughter talked to some people online that kind of made her uncomfortable. And it has actually created more fear in her day-to-day social skills, because she doesn't want to deal with what she did online in person. And so it makes her afraid, because is she going to get the gaslighting? Is she going to get the guilt trips in person from these people like she did online? And she felt safer online because she could just turn it off. But in person, she can't. So it's just causing more fear and social anxiety for kids these days.
I agree. On a final note, is there one quote or one thing that comes to mind that you live by? A quote, a scripture, a quote, anything that kind of defines how you feel and how you think?
I do, and that's really what my book is about. It's just be your own hero. No one's coming to save you. It's not that people don't want to save you, and it's not that you shouldn't try to help others, but everybody's going through their own thing, and they just may not be capable of stepping up and helping you when you need it. And so you always need to be ready to step in and save yourself, and not fall into a victim mindset where you get stuck. So be your own hero.
And where can people get the book?
You can get the book. It is available on Amazon, paperback and Kindle, or you can go to my direct link, which is perfectlyflawedbook.com.
Excellent. Look forward to talking to you some more. You're phenomenal, inspirational, and very intelligent. And I think you have a lot of wisdom to share with the world.
Thank you. And I appreciate your time. This has been a great experience for me. Thank you.
It's always a great experience talking with you. And I have to thank my sponsors, because we don't have a show without the sponsors, of course. Even though we have you on the show, I mean, that's great. But we got to get the sponsors to pay for some things. I want to thank Attorney King for what he does. Thank you, Attorney King. You're awesome. Thank you for believing in IQ Podcast and Sarah and myself. And of course, the great Cody Martinez with Sequan Casino and Resort. Phenomenal place to stay. Janae, if you're ever in San Diego and you want to stay at a great place with a nice pool and nice meals, I highly recommend Sequan. They're amazing. I also like to say thank you to another strong, independent, kick-ass woman, Marina Teal, who has a gym in Imperial Beach, and a lot of military go there and train. It's by the SEAL base over there. Marina Teal with IB Fitness, a place where I go to train almost every day. It's a great gym. It's open 24 hours. There's no excuse. Thank you, Marina Teal, for what you do and your belief in us. And Bona Faqueta, the garage. Marco, thank you so much for everything you do in the community. And we love your food. And I'll tell you, he makes some really good food at Bona Faqueta. Everybody take care. Be nice to each other. And yippee-ki-yay.